Hi, I'm at DOTD today with Mike Gorbaty, the Consultant Contract Services Manager, and we're talking about common mistakes on the 24102 form. So Mike, we're going to walk through some of the things that you see in the submissions on advertisements so that we can just point out to our consultants what they need to make sure they're aware of. So let's just start with the easy stuff. You've suggested make sure you read the advertisement.
Absolutely. That is the biggest, I think, issue that we've got is a lot of times people are just used to doing things the way they've done them in the past. They just grab the last one they did and just replace it with new information. There's some traps if you do it that way. You really should take each ad individually and read the ad from page 1 all the way to the last page. Make sure you fully understand it before you try to start putting your proposal together.
So what are some of the things you see that are easy enough, but when you have the evaluation team looking at it, when they first see a mistake, such as the contract title, is this something you're seeing?
And once again, we're in a kind of a cut and paste world, and sometimes because of that, we see some problems that are easily corrected, but hate to have to go through the effort to get that done. If we just did it right the first time, things would go smoother. So if I could just
Sure.
bring this up to this is the DOTD form 24102, which is on our website. The current version is August 14th, 2019, and that is one of the issues right there, is sometimes people don't use the most recent version of the 24102, so consequently some of the information may not be where it's supposed to be or may not be there at all. So always go to the website, make sure you got the current version, and like I said, the current version now is August 14th, 2009. Some of the cut and paste type errors that we see are in these first 4 sections. Sometimes people will have the wrong contract title, the wrong contract numbers, even the wrong project numbers because they've cut and paste and they forgot to change those numbers.
Pulled up a previous form.
Pulled up a previous one, exactly. So we catch that when that happens, and we will send out a clarification to get y'all to correct it, or get the consultants to correct it. We would not deem anyone non-responsive for something like that. That's something that's easily corrected. So just make sure you have the correct version. Not only that you're using the correct version, but if you have any sub-consultants that are part of your team, you need to make sure, because you're responsible for them as well, make sure that they've used the right version and they have all the right information as well. Another thing down here in, let's see, before we get to that, APL is, we have to, the consultant and the sub-consultants all have to submit with the proposal the APL, which is the annual personnel list. It's the prime consultant's responsibility to make sure that not only they submit the APL, but that all of their sub-consultants have also done that. That's something that should be easily done, but we have had some instances where that wasn't done, and unfortunately that may have deemed them to be non-responsive.
So that's a key point.
Yes, that's a
They're
big
not
one.
completing that accurately. That could deem you non-responsive.
Right. So just confirm that this is the right contract, the right project, things like that. Next one going down, probably section 10, which is information regarding DBE. Not all advertisements have a DBE goal, but when it does have a DBE goal, there are certain requirements that need to be met, and sometimes the consultants fall a little short on that. And this is something that may deem them non-responsive as well. One of the things that you need to do in section 10 of the 24102 is identify which sub-consultant is going to satisfy the DBE goal and what that percentage is that they're going to be doing. And we've had where some consultants, prime consultants, may have 2 or 3 sub-consultants that are all DBE firms that collectively will meet the goal. The goal is clearly identified on the advertisement, and then that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the DBE participation to make sure that it does in fact meet that goal.
Does each of the sub contractors that are each a DBE, do you have to show their percentages, or as long as they add up to the cumulative total of consultants?
Well, it would probably be best to go ahead and do the individual ones, and then you can put the cumulative amount as well. Okay?
Okay.
Now,
So,
and the reason why that's important, and let me go to this over here. I'm going to turn to one of this is a sample of an ad right here. And under the contract execution requirements article of the ad, where it addresses DBE, and here's where it's important. If I go down here, it clearly states that if the prime did not succeed in obtaining enough DBE participation to meet the goal, it must attach the DOTD Form 24102 behind Section 17, documentation of its good faith efforts to meet the goal. So, for example, if we have a 10% DBE goal, and the consultant is unable to find any DBE participation, they have to tell us what steps, what efforts they took to go try and find DBE participation, but for whatever reason was unable to successfully locate it. That documentation has to be included in the proposal, and it should be placed in Section 17. Or if you don't meet all of the goal, let's say it's a 10% goal, for example, and your DBE participation adds up to 5%, well, you're still 5% short. You need to, once again, in Section 17, identify what efforts you took to try and reach the goal and what problems you were having. If you just ignore that, that may deem you non-responsive as well.
and so on the form where you have the line where you have to complete that, if it's 5% or it's the goal, or less than the goal, or 0%, do they need to mark, what do they need to put in that line?
What I would do is and let's go back to that. What I would do is, let's say we had a 10% goal, and whatever DBE participation you had only added up to say 5%, like we said, I would put on here, see Section 17 for explanation or whatever.
Okay. Do not just leave it blank.
Right, just don't leave it blank.
Okay, great.
Okay?
So we're gonna go to Section 11, past performance rating category. That's an important evaluation criteria. So what do you see consultants sometimes do in Section 11?
In Section 11, and this is on the DOTD 24102, and let me go to an ad example. Let's see, that would be up this way. Excuse the scrolling. Let's see if I'll be quick if I did it this way. Right there. Okay. Every ad identifies what the past performance rating categories are going to be, and this is where you would get the information to help prepare the consultant's Section 11 response. We identify the two-letter rating categories. For example, location survey is LC, road design RR, so forth and so on. And then we identify what we believe the percentage of the overall contract that effort is going to encompass. So, for example, location and survey on this particular ad, we believe that's going to be about 30% of the effort. One of the problems that we find here is this. What the consultant is to do when they complete this chart is if they are doing everything, if there are no sub-consultants involved, you don't even have to do this chart. You just say, I'm doing it myself. But if there are sub-consultants involved, you have to complete this chart. And what you have to show is what percentage of each firm is going to be doing location and survey.
Of the 30%.
Of the 30%. And the problem that we find is sometimes what they do is these numbers here, when you add them up, are supposed to add up to 100%, not 30%. So this is 100% of 30%. So sometimes we got to do.
So, for example, if you're going to use two other firms for survey, location survey, then you need to have 50% and 50% if they're going to handle that. Or the prime's going to do 10, the firm B is going to do 50, and firm C is going to do 40, so that you have 100%.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And then same thing is true with the percentage of contract down here at the bottom. Let me move it up just a little bit. Percentage of contract is 100%. Well, when you add these up right here, everyone's participation, that should add up to 100%. And sometimes, believe it or not, it doesn't. sometimes, I remember one in particular that added up to 102%.
So if the firm B, in our example, firm B under location and survey is doing 50% of the 30%, then you need to calculate what that is of 100% of the full contract.
That's
so
correct.
then it would go down. So it's 50% up there, but it's going to be whatever that portion is of the overall project.
Right. And
It would not be the same two numbers.
That's correct. So, and just doing quick math, if I'm, if
I'll
I
let
can,
you do the math.
50% of 30% would be 15%. So this is probably would be 15% here, unless they had some other effort down in here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But once again, this has to equal 100%, and so do these.
And failure to adequately fill out this form,
Clarification.
clarification required. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to section 12, which is the organizational chart. But what you want to highlight is that it's an organizational chart of the relevant personnel.
That's correct. And let me go there real quick. Okay, and once again, off of the 24-102, if I can just show kind of highlight the instructions here, and you've already mentioned it. It's an organizational chart showing all relevant prime and subconsultant personnel, and that's the two key words is relevant and personnel. The way we view it is, and I'll jump ahead for just a minute, when you go to section 13 of the 24-102, that's identifying those individuals that meet the MPR, the minimum personnel requirements. To me, the MPRs is just getting you past go. Section 12 is really where the consultants are going to show us how they intend to solve whatever this engineering problem is that we have. So section 12 is very important. That's why we ask for the relevant personnel, and like I said, and personnel. We want people's names. We don't want things like supporting staff as a title. That doesn't mean anything to us. First of all, supporting staff wouldn't be relevant by definition anyway, but it's not names of individuals. And in this particular section, we do run into problems almost with every advertisement. And if I can just tell you what some of them are. First one is the org chart is going to have everybody's names. It's going to be one chart for the team, which includes both the prime consultant as well as sub-consultants. What we are finding in just about every ad, we are finding where there are people identified here as being a relevant person. However, there's been no resume attached to the proposal to where we can find out what this person's experience is and what they're going to be doing. So that's, in those cases, once again, it's a clarification. We say, okay, we see that John Doe is relevant, but you
didn't attach the resume.
That's a resume. Please send us the resume. So that's a big one. Another one is, once again, in section 13, where you identify the minimum personnel requirements. You have to identify those individuals by name. Well, if they're meeting the MPRs, you would think that they should be on this org chart. And sometimes they're not. So we, once again, with clarification, and that will typically get fixed very quickly. And once again, we don't want like organizations identified here. We want personnel identified by name. Then one other thing that's a problem, and I think it's getting to be less of a problem since I've been here, but it still crops up, is we're only going to evaluate, and we say it in the instructions here. Let me make sure I can find it. Let's see. Actually, it's not on this one. I think it's on this one. Well, it might be further back, actually. We're only going to evaluate those personnel that are identified as relevant personnel. And then once again, assuming that the people who are identified as those people satisfying MPRs will also be included on this chart. So if a consultant includes additional resumes of people who are not on this organizational chart, we don't look at them.
No matter how qualified and
no matter how qualified and
competent,
we don't look at them because they're not on the team.
In your mind, they're not on the team unless they're on the org chart.
On the org chart. So, and when, that's one of the things we do when we meet with our project evaluation team, when we're giving them their instructions, we tell them if there are any resumes included in the proposal of individuals who are not identified as being either relevant or on the NPR, disregard it. So that's important to understand that.
All right, we'll move on to section 13. You note that